You're not listening to me. Callum's raised voice made me freeze in the hallway outside Sophie's room. We have to get her treated, no matter what it takes. And what about the cost? Eliza's strained tone carried through the cracked door. We're already drowning in medical bills. Their argument about my 7-year-old granddaughter's condition wasn't new, but the desperation in their voices stopped me dead in my tracks. As a retired nurse, I knew heated situations between exhausted parents weren't uncommon, but this felt different. Cost doesn't matter. Callum's fist pounded something, making me jump. Don't you see what this is doing to her? To us? I couldn't resist peeking through the narrow opening. Callum towered over Eliza, his eyes wild. She shrank back, cradling her swollen belly. They'd just announced her second pregnancy. The sight of my own son so unhinged towards his wife twisted my stomach into knots. Of course I see, Eliza whispered, fingers grazing the puckered scar along her jawline. A grimace flickered across her face. But going bankrupt won't help Sophie either. My heart broke watching them crumble before each other. The disfiguring scars my once vibrant granddaughter suffered after that mysterious accident with an experimental beauty cream had upended all our lives. But fracturing their marriage? No, this had gone too far. I barged into the bedroom, calling out in my no-nonsense nursing voice. What in heaven's name is going on here? Callum whirled around, eyes widening like a kid caught misbehaving. Eliza stifled a gasp, hand flying protectively over her belly. They'd been so engrossed, neither noticed me eavesdropping outside Sophie's pink bedroom door. A tense silence fell over the room, the kind of hush that smothers with its heaviness. I planted myself between the feuding couple, back ramrod, straight. Well? My harsh tone finally snapped Callum to attention. Mom? He swallowed hard, casting a sidelong glance at Eliza before returning my unwavering stare. You know Sophie's condition. It's getting worse again. And I lifted my brows expectantly. Callum opened his mouth, then closed it, shaking his head. Wisps of his thinning hair stirred with the troubled motion. I don't know what to do anymore. Those defeated words punched me in the gut harder than anything these past 9 months. Seeing this grown man, my son, so hopelessly lost, crushed my heart. I reached out, gripping his arm. Then it's time you start telling me everything. My voice softened, but the steel behind it didn't bend one bit. Because I'm putting an end to this once and for all. I spent the next several days piecing together the harrowing truth behind Sophie's disfiguring scars. With stubborn determination, I dug deeper, interviewing friends, combing through records, double-checking every lead. What I uncovered made my blood boil hotter than Arizona asphalt in July. It all traced back to that vile snake, Trent Radwin, a businessman peddling sketchy, untested beauty products through sham health companies and multi-level marketing schemes. Trent had roped in my sweet but naive daughter-in-law Eliza with promises of life-changing opportunities, getting her to sell his chemical concoctions door to door. Then came the product that burned Sophie. I shuddered, recalling the photographs. My beautiful granddaughter's once cherubic face, modeled and raw, transformed into a splotchy, agonizing mess from one of Trent's miracle rejuvenation serums. The images turned my stomach every time. But what enraged me most wasn't the shoddy product itself. No, it was the discovery that my own son Callum had deliberately gone behind Eliza's back to purchase it for her, convincing himself the risk would be worth the results. I slammed my fist on the kitchen counter, making Eliza jump. I can't believe your husband. My fury caught in my throat at the fresh wave of hurt washing over her troubled features. Riding the crest of mood swings in her second trimester, Eliza's eyes welled up as she cradled her pregnant belly. He didn't mean any harm, she whispered, shooting a protective glance towards the hallway where her daughter slept. He just wanted to help. By disfiguring your little girl? I scoffed in disbelief. That's ridiculous. Eliza flinched at my harsh tone. I forced myself to take a deep, calming breath. My frustration wasn't with her. When did he buy the product? I asked in a measured voice. How did he even hear about it? Eliza gnawed her lip, gaze flickering away guiltily. I suddenly realized her potential role, that scheming, conniving. The front door swung open, creaking on its hinges. Callum shuffled in, shoulders slumped with fatigue after another long day at his construction job. Seeing us both in the kitchen, his brows furrowed with worry. Hey, what's going on? I didn't give Eliza a chance to explain away her betrayal. Stalking towards him with righteous indignation, I whipped out the product photos. Start talking, mister. My tone brooked no argument. I know what you did. Understanding flickered across his weary face as his gaze dropped to the incriminating evidence in my hands. He paled, mouth moving wordlessly as he struggled to formulate a response. I didn't mean to. I held up a hand, silencing his pathetic excuses. Peering into my child's haunted eyes, I made him a cold promise. We're going to make this right, Callum. One way or another, that Trent bastard will pay for what he's done, even if I have to burn his empire to the ground myself. The next morning, I wasted no time putting my plan into action. While Eliza took the kids to a play date, I paid a visit to my old friend, Dr. Lucas Harding, at the hospital where I used to work as a nurse. Lucas greeted me with a warm hug, his salt and pepper beard scratching my cheek. Even after retiring, the sight of his familiar face and reassuring manner instantly put me at ease. "It's been too long, Marjorie," he said, ushering me inside his office. "Though I wish it were under better circumstances." I handed him the horrific photos of Sophie's scarring, my jaw tightening. "You can see why I need your help, Lucas." He studied the images intently, frowning as his fingers traced over the mottled patterns burned into my granddaughter's delicate skin. Looking up at me with sorrowful eyes, he shook his head slowly. "Oh, Marjorie, how's the poor girl handling this?" "About as well as can be expected," I replied tersely. "But that's exactly why I'm here, to put an end to her suffering once and for all." Lucas nodded, setting the photos aside. "Of course, as the head of pediatric plastic surgery, I may be able to." "It's more than just Sophie," I cut him off, leaning forward urgently. "I need your help exposing the scumbag responsible, too." The sudden shift in my demeanor made him blink in surprise. Lucas and I went way back. He knew my old no-nonsense nurse persona didn't come out unless I meant business. He folded his hands, giving me his full attention. "Talk to me." I laid out everything I'd uncovered about Trent Radwin's malicious scheme. The sham companies, the dangerous product formulations, the lack of safety tests, all of it. As I spoke, Lucas's frown deepened into a look of utter disgust. "That's unconscionable," he muttered, shaking his head. "Preying on people's insecurities like that for profit, with no regard for safety? Someone has to stop him." I leaned across the desk, conviction burning in my eyes. "Exactly why I'm asking for your help, Doc. You're a respected surgeon with major clout in the medical field. Your expert testimony could be the linchpin to take Trent down and get justice for Sophie. And all the other victims out there." Lucas held my gaze for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "You know you've always had my full support, Marjay. Consider me on board." A shared look of grim determination passed between us, two battle-hardened soldiers girding for the fight ahead. I expelled a deep, relieved breath, some of the weight lifting from my shoulders. "Thank you, Lucas. Together we'll make that son of a bitch pay for what he's done to my family." Hand on the doorknob, I paused, turning back with one last haunted look. Because if we don't stop Trent, God only knows how many more innocent victims like Sophie will suffer. As I left Lucas's office, the gravity of the struggle before me settled like a mantle across my tired shoulders. But my resolve hardened with every step. Nothing would stop me from protecting my loved ones and securing the justice they deserved. With Dr. Lucas on my side, I felt more emboldened than ever to take down Trent Radwin. But the more I fought, the more fractures emerged within my own family. I cornered Eliza after her household wellness sales team meeting one evening. Unlike previous pitiful excuses, this time she didn't shy away from my piercing stare. "I know what you're going to say," she stated in a toneless voice, resting a hand on her swollen belly. "About how selling those products is unethical and dangerous." I arched an incredulous brow. "So you admit you're peddling that snake Trent's garbage?" Eliza closed her eyes, shaking her head warily. When she opened them, storm clouds swirled in their green depths. "I did it for Callum, okay?" Her voice thickened with anguish. Ever since Sophie's accident, he's been obsessed with finding a fix, anything to erase the scars and make her normal again. She released a bitter scoff, mouth twisting, as if our daughter's value is measured only by her looks. My heart clenched at the raw pain laced through her words. All the emotional turmoil left Eliza's pretty face drained and haggard, aging her beyond her 32 years. Stepping closer, I gentled my voice. "So you decided selling toxic products behind his back was the answer?" Eliza barked a mirthless laugh, swiping at the dampness welling in her eyes. "What other choice did I have? By the time I realized how messed up this company was, I was in too deep." Her shoulders slumped with defeat. "Callum, he's so convinced we can reverse the damage to Sophie, like he's trying to rewrite her entire childhood pretending none of it happened. I could barely afford half her medical bills, let alone... She trailed off, shaking her head. Whatever dark place her mind had gone, it clearly haunted her. I reached out, gripping her arm gently but firmly. "Hey, listen to me." Lifting her hollow gaze to meet mine, I spoke with the assurance of someone who'd lived many hard-won battles. "We're going to get through this, and we're going to stop Trent from hurting anyone else, you hear?" Her brow furrowed with glimmers of hesitant hope. "But how? He's rich, powerful, has lawyers up the wazoo." "By hitting him where it hurts most." My voice hardened to steel. "His money and reputation. Once his corporate empire crumbles and the world sees him for the conniving profiteer he really is." I let my voice trail off meaningfully as realization dawned in Eliza's widening eyes. "He'll have nothing left," she murmured. I gave her arm a reassuring squeeze. "Which is exactly why we need to present a united front. No more lies, no more excuses, just cold hard truth." Squaring my shoulders, I leveled her with a look that brooked no argument. "Are you with me, Eliza? Because this is our chance to make things right, for Sophie's sake." Eliza stared back at me for a long moment, indecision and apprehension warring across her features. But then her brows knit with a mother's protective resolve. "For my daughter," she intoned, straightening her spine, "I'm in." With a nod of acceptance, I sealed our unspoken pact. Together we would fight, no matter how arduous the path. Because that's what mothers did to protect their children. Failure was not an option. With Eliza as my unlikely ally, our quest to take down Trent gained new momentum. But the vile bastard wasn't going down without a vicious fight. It started small, unnerving hang-ups on the landline, a snapped photog stalking Eliza during her sales pitch, nuisance stuff easily dismissed, until it escalated way beyond pranks and intimidation tactics. Eliza and I planned to confront Trent at one of his supply facilities, hit him hard with the incriminating evidence we'd gathered. But when we arrived, the parking lot sat empty aside from a souped-up muscle car idling by the main entrance. Two thugs in ill-fitting suits leaned against the car, arms crossed over their burly chests. They eyed us like lions eyeing gazelles as we pulled up. "You sure you want to go through with this?" Eliza asked, voice wobbling. Even her usual bravado melted facing the menacing duo blocking our path. "More than ever," I growled, throwing the car into park. "Trent's not scaring us off that easily." We exited and marched toward the entrance, our kitten heels clacking across the pavement with more confidence than I felt. Up close, the hired muscle sized us up with disdainful sneers, eyes lingering tauntingly on Eliza's rounded belly. "Sorry, ladies," the taller one drawled in a gravelly accent. "Boss ain't taking visitors today." Fire licked through my veins. "We're not leaving until we see him." The shorter goon snorted crudely. "That's so?" Straightening off the car, he started toward Eliza with a menacing leer. "Maybe we can persuade you to reconsider, sweetheart." "Leave her alone." I stepped between them, fists clenched. Granted, the 200-pound brutes towered over my 5'4" frame, but something primal flared inside me, a mother's wrath sharpening to a razor point. My reckless bravado only seemed to amuse them. The taller one uttered a bark of laughter, grabbing my forearm in a vice-like grip. "You got some spunk, Granny. I'll give you that." My heart stuttered as that iron grasp effortlessly yanked me closer, bending me off balance. Terror and anger blurred in a sickening whirlpool inside me. I twisted futilely against his crushing hold. "Let her go!" Eliza shouted, moving to intervene. In a blink, the second goon shoved her back, snarling in her face. She yelped, clutching her belly protectively as she stumbled. White-hot fury lanced through me like a lightning bolt. "Don't you touch her!" I snarled with a ferocity that surprised even me. "Don't you dare lay a hand! That's enough." A new voice, smooth and cultured, froze the whole parking lot confrontation. All eyes swiveled toward the entrance, where a figure emerged. Trent himself, looking as impeccably groomed and smug as ever in his tailored suit. "Ladies, ladies," he chided with an infuriatingly patronizing smile. "Is that any way to treat our invited guests?" I opened my mouth to retort, but the gorilla restraining me tightened his grip warningly. Grinding my teeth, I settled for pinning Trent with the deadliest glare I could muster. He brushed an invisible speck off his lapel, utterly unruffled. "My apologies for security's overzealousness. Why don't we take this conversation inside, I have a feeling you'll want some privacy for what I'm about to propose." Trent's cold smile didn't reach his eyes as he swept a hand toward the looming facility's entrance, beckoning us forward like prized lamb to the slaughterhouse. I stared at him with a mix of fury and trepidation churning in my gut, because despite the calm, self-assured veneer, deep down I recognized the look of a desperate man with everything to lose. After the parking lot confrontation, Eliza and I refused to be cowed by Trent's bullying tactics. If anything, it only stoked our determination to a roaring blaze. We doubled down, collecting more evidence and testimony from other victims. Eliza's network of mom friends put us in touch with various local parents whose children had been burned, scarred, or otherwise injured by Trent's sham products over the years. The more we dug, the more shocking revelations came to light. Lawsuits hushed with settlements and non-disclosure agreements, safety tests falsified or ignored completely for rushed product launches. This so-called beauty regimen was destroying families, all to line Trent's pockets. Armed with a mountain of damning proof, we finally went public. At first, it started with a few brave souls posting about their ordeals on mom forums and social media, but as stories spread like wildfire across the internet, the spark ignited into a raging inferno of outrage. Suddenly, Trent Radwin's Rejuvenate Life empire found itself in the harsh spotlight, laid bare for the world to see its deceit and greed. Boycotts swelled as influencers disavowed his products left and right. Journalists swarmed any scrap of this unfolding scandal like sharks scenting blood in the water. While our movement swelled into a PR disaster for Trent, Callum stood shamefully on the sidelines. Even confronted with the truth about how he'd enabled this devastation, he remained stubbornly mired in denial and self-pity. "Why can't you see I was only trying to help Sophie?" he shouted, raking his hands through thinning hair. "I just wanted her to feel normal again." I regarded him with a weary sort of sadness, my own son blinded by shallow obsessions, willing to destroy lives to mask the scars he couldn't handle looking at. Even as the hellfire raged around Trent's crumbling empire, Callum refused to face his part in enabling it. But karma held no mercy for misguided intentions. With credible lawsuits piling up by the day, production screeched to a halt on Trent's entire product line. Authorities launched investigations into the health code violations and fraudulent business practices. Retailers dropped his brand en masse, scrubbing every last Rejuvenate Life relic from their shelves and websites alike. And yet, through it all, Trent clung to the last arrogant vestiges of his shattered empire with snarling combativeness. "Do you really think this laughable crusade will stop me?" he sneered during an on-camera interview ambush, beads of sweat dampening his brow as camera flashes bombarded him. "I'll bury every last one of you lying bitches in litigation." His words should have incensed me, if they didn't reek so blatantly of desperation. Because as his crooked kingdom crumbled around him, I glimpsed the shell of the man underneath, as small, pathetic, and empty as the vapid products he'd peddled. A schmuck riding high on a wave of greed only to get swallowed by the very same tide. Standing alongside Eliza and Lucas as we watched the news broadcast, a grim smile tugged at my lips. "Not if we bury you first, jackass." Trent's defiant sneer made for a fitting final image, scorched into America's consciousness as the disgraced face of corporate malice and morally bankrupt ambition. Because when the judicial hammer finally struck that corrupt empire down, it wouldn't just demolish Trent professionally, it would obliterate him emotionally, too. He'd finally experienced the same suffering and humiliation he'd profited from inflicting on countless victims like Sophie. And as I looked at the stoic strength blazing in Eliza's eyes, I knew that hard-won justice would be the sweetest karma of all. The day of Trent's high-profile trial dawned bright and crisp, much like the promise of justice about to unfurl. Despite the early hour, a crush of protesters and media swarmed the courthouse steps, jostling for position. At the eye of this storm, Eliza and I strode forward shoulder to shoulder, granite pillars of resolve cutting through the frenzied crowd. Dr. Lucas followed close behind, clutching his briefcase of damning medical reports like a sword sheathed for battle. Callum trailed behind us, gaze downcast and shoulders hunched, a stark contrast to the reckless bravado that sparked this whole nightmare to begin with. While part of me pitied his self-imposed purgatory, the rest simmered with disappointment that he still couldn't take full accountability. We brushed past a phalanx of news cameras, capturing every angle of our grim-faced procession. Reporters barked invasive questions, desperate for reactionary sound bites. "Miss Hutchins, how does it feel to stand against a corporate empire? Will Trent Radwin finally get his comeuppance? Is today's verdict justice for little Sophie?" Refusing to pander to their insatiable lust for salacious tidbits, I stared straight ahead, Eliza matching my stone-walled silence stride for stride. Only Sophie, nestled in Lucas's arms, warranted my softening gaze. The courthouse's gleaming facade rose before us, a modern monolith of steel and glass that would bear witness to Trent's legacy of callous deceit unraveling before the nation. A uniformed officer held the door, eyes sweeping over our group. "You're the Radwin plaintiffs, I presume?" His low drawl radiated Texan impassivity. "Best be getting you folks inside." A hush descended as we filed past the myriad security checkpoints, relinquishing belongings, enduring wand pat-downs with stoic compliance. This realm of criminal proceedings operated by sacred, meticulous ritual that commanded our respect, for today justice would reign supreme. At last they ushered us into the sterile, fluorescent-bathed courtroom. Already the gallery benches teemed with supporters, their eyes burning into my back with every purposeful stride toward the plaintiff's desk. Inwardly steeling my nerves, I settled into the rigid wooden seat, hyper-aware of every scrape and shuffle resonating through that hallowed space. Eliza clutched my hand, an anchor of quiet fortitude amidst the swirling storm about to break. Then, like a dark specter skulking out of its den, Trent himself appeared. Flanked by a trio of sleek, Armani-clad lawyers, he swept through the courtroom entrance with all the entitled arrogance of a Caesar inspecting the Colosseum games. Sharp eyes coldly surveyed the cramped gallery audience before landing on our desk with a dismissive curl of his lip. Sophie shrank deeper into Lucas's protective embrace as Trent locked eyes with the ravaged side of her face. A sinister smirk slithered across his mouth. White-hot fury blazed through me at that taunting look, that same cocksure sneer showcased in all the newscasts, radiating utter contempt for the devastation he'd wrought. As if human lives shattered by his greed were nothing more than irksome nuisances beneath his station. A muscle ticked in my clenched jaw as I glared back at Trent unflinchingly. He arched a coolly amused brow, basking in twisted pride at the sheer virulence of my loathing. Two could play at bearing fangs, it seemed. Then, just as abruptly as he'd arrived, that dark presence slithered away to his defense table, leaving a tension thick enough to choke the entire room. I allowed myself a slow, steadying breath through flared nostrils. Let the bastard take this reprieve while he could. Karma, long overdue, would have her day, and we held the gavels of vindication in our bloodied palms. As the court airlock sealed with a metallic thud, my gaze met Eliza's, then Lucas's. We exchanged the barest nods, gripped by a unified sense of foreboding momentousness. The reckoning had begun. The judge's gavel cracked like a thunderclap, the proclamation still ringing in my ears. Hereby finds the defendant, Trent Jonas Radwin, guilty on all counts of criminal negligence, willful endangerment, and fraudulent business practices. A torrent of cheers and applause erupted around me, but I remained motionless, stunned. Eliza dissolved into relieved sobs, clutching my arm in a trembling grip. Across the aisle, Trent's arrogant veneer shattered as fire erupted behind his eyes, jawline twitching with impotent rage. It was over. After countless sacrifices, endless uphill battles, we had won. The months and years evaporated as pivotal scenes from our quest flashed through my mind in rapid succession, uncovering Trent's toxic products, gathering the victim's horrifying accounts, defying his thug intimidation tactics, uniting our fractured family against him. Every excruciating step led to this courtroom victory, a cathartic crucible where karmic justice had been served. As deputies rushed forward to escort the disgraced defendant into custody, a new sound pierced the courtroom din, a child's voice ringing out like a bell amid the cacophony. "Nana, we did it!" I blinked, Sophie's radiant face swimming into focus amid the chaos. Beside her, Callum and Dr. Lucas beamed matching grins of elated pride and relief. In that moment, the years seemed to melt off my son's haggard features, restoring a long-absent lightness to his eyes. No longer weighed down by self-loathing and denial, he'd finally reclaimed his soul from the darkness that drove him to enable Trent's wicked empire. Freedom shone through Callum as brightly as the scars emblazoning my granddaughter's face, a face no longer marred by shame or disfigurement, but born with hard-won triumph. I surged to my feet, tears stinging my eyes as I swept Sophie into a crushing embrace, her slight body convulsed with delirious giggles, cherubic features glowing in innocent jubilation, completely incongruous with the turmoil she'd endured. "We did it, sweetheart," I choked out, planting a tearful kiss on her brow amid the swirling chaos. "We got justice for you." In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the jeering crowd, the reporters clamoring for comment, certainly not the murderous glare Trent shot our way as he got hauled past in handcuffs. The only thing resonating through me, soul deep, was the pureness of reclaimed hope. Because as Sophie nestled into my arms, it wasn't the scars I saw. Instead, I marveled at the indomitable spirit shining through, tenacious, jubilant, triumphant, a living embodiment of our family's shared resilience over adversity. That's when I realized the jury's verdict served as more than just Trent's downfall. This courtroom crucible marked a phoenix-like rebirth for all of us, forging deeper bonds of healing, renewal, and unbreakable unity from the ashes of betrayal and scarred pasts. Pulling back, I cradled Sophie's face and stared into her shining hazel eyes, alight with the promise of new horizons. "How about we get your treatment started?" I murmured. "Give that smile an even bigger reason to shine." She nodded vigorously, pigtails bouncing. As Callum stepped forward and we enveloped each other in a family embrace, a profound sense of peace washed over me like a baptismal wave. The long, arduous road from resentment to redemption had reached its end. While Trent's greed and malice would decay behind bars, the deeper bonds forged in truth and resilience would only grow stronger. Our family's next chapter beckoned, unshackled from burdens and burning with renewed vibrancy. The rest of our lives were just beginning.